Part 51. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 501. From a distance, he saw Tian Yangsheng and others holding a huge sign with a big Gu written on it. There was no other way, so his elder brother Li Qing told him that the leader's surname was Gu, and there was no other information, so he had to use this stupid method. Fortunately, there were not many Chinese here, so it was impossible to make a mistake. Tian Yangsheng saw a skinny old man, with a group of middle-aged and young people wearing black-framed glasses, hurried over. "Are you here to pick us up?" Gu Chang pushed his glasses and walked in front of Tian Yangsheng. If you are from China, then you are right," Tian Yangsheng said with a smile. Gu Chang looked Tian Yangsheng up and down. "Are you Li Qing?" Don't dare, don't dare. My elder brother is Li Qing." Tian Yangsheng waved his hands repeatedly. He didn't dare to pretend to be the elder brother. "Well, let's go." Gu Chang walked forward with his hands behind his back. Tian Yangsheng and others scratched their heads, only to feel that the old man had a strange temper. "I'm Sima Sa. Sorry, my teacher has this kind of temper. Please bear with me." Gu Chang's student, the middle-aged man, walked up with his luggage and said with a smile. "Haha, it's okay. Old man, I understand. Let's go, brother." Tian Yangsheng waved his hand indifferently. Gu Chang is old enough to be his grandfather. He will definitely not be angry about such a small matter. Besides, he also knows that these people are the pillars of China. "Old man, please get in the car." Tian Yangsheng pointed to the Rolls-Royce parked on the side of the road and said. In order to show respect, Li Qing specially asked Tian Yangsheng to pick up the expert in his own car. "Am I old?" "Tisk tisk, such a good car, the money can cover our research funds for several years." Gu Chang heard Tian Yangsheng's words, first glared at him, and then looked at the Rolls-Royce with shining eyes. The engineers behind him also saw the extended version of Rolls-Royce for the first time. Some of them who know cars know that this car is a sky-high price for them. "Tisk tisk, nice car. Nice car? This is a luxury car. A stretched version of Rolls-Royce Phantom Furrier is worth this amount." The man held up 2 fingers. 2 million? My God, that's enough for our unit's research funding for a year. Hee, 2 million to buy a wheel, 20 million. Hiss. Gu Chang also heard their discussion and murmured, "Give me 2 million, I can build a car with better performance than this one. I don't know why this iron box is so expensive." Alas. Gu Chang shook his head and got in the car. The engineers behind him didn't say anything. They had a preliminary understanding of the person who came to pick them up. He is definitely a wealthy businessman. Half an hour later, the car drove into the manor that Tian Yangsheng bought for Li Qing. This manor was bought from the second-rate oligarch. It is said that it was the manor of the former Russian nobles. Gu Chang and his group got out of the car. It had just snowed, and the entire manor was covered in silver. Against the backdrop of the white snow, the Russian-style buildings looked more majestic and simple, with a unique exotic style. "Mr. Gu, please come in," Tian Yangsheng guided Gu Chang. He had already learned about Gu Chang's identity through communication in the car, so he naturally did not dare to slack off on Gu Chang. Because of his identity as a war orphan, he personally respected the old revolutionaries who came from World War II. Li Qing had been waiting in the house for a long time. When he saw Gu Chang and his group come in, he immediately stood up and walked forward. "Welcome, everyone, you have worked hard all the way." He set his eyes on the leader Gu Chang. Qi Gang did not say his name in advance, he only knew that the leader's surname was Gu. "Hello, Teacher Gu," Li Qing simply took advantage of it. Anyway, it was not wrong to call him teacher wherever he went. You are Li Qing." Gu Chang's eyes flashed with surprise. He did not expect Li Qing to be so young. I thought Li Qing would be like those patriotic overseas Chinese, with a head full of silver hair. Li Qing smiled and looked at the old man in front of him. Yes, I am Li Qing. Gu Chang suddenly turned his head to look at his students, and saw that the engineers put down their luggage one by one and straightened their bodies. Gu Chang also tidied his clothes. Everyone, salute. More than a dozen people saluted Li Qing in unison. They were all military workers. Li Qing's face changed slightly, his eyes became solemn, he stretched out his right hand, clenched his fist and touched his heart, lowered his head slightly, and returned the salute. At this time, everyone in Tianyangsheng was also a little shocked. They finally understood why Gu Chang asked him if he was Li Qing as soon as they met. Thank you for everything you have done for the country. Gu Chang stepped forward and shook Li Qing's hand and said. Li Qing held Gu Chang's thin but warm hand and smiled, I am also a Chinese. It's nothing for me to do this for my country. Li Qing suddenly felt that the group of people in front of him made him feel very warm in his heart. Sure enough, there are still so many people who are silently working for the country. Everything he did is meaningful. No, what you did is more important than you think. We are professional aircraft engineers, and we know more details than them. If we don't have a reference, it will take at least 30 years for us to catch up with the big countries by relying on closed-door development. Gu Chang was very stubborn and retorted bluntly. Li Qing suddenly felt that the little old man in front of him was a little cute. He took a polite remark seriously. You are tired from the journey. I have asked someone to prepare a room for you. You can rest first. The dinner party has been arranged in the evening. Li Qing saw that Gu Chang looked a little tired, and he spoke immediately. No, time is urgent, we have to act immediately. Gu Chang immediately became serious. Teacher Gu, don't worry, there is still time, I will take you there in person tomorrow. Li Qing smiled and shook his head, he probably understood what kind of character this person is. Yes, teacher. You have been on the plane for such a long time, take a break, sharpening the knife does not delay the chopping of wood. Besides, they are tired too. Sima SA pointed at the group of engineers and said. Gu Chang looked back at the engineers who were indeed a little tired. You can't hold on like this? I went to study in the Bear Country by train. Forget it, let's talk about it tomorrow. As soon as Gu Chang finished speaking, the engineers breathed a sigh of relief. Then Tianyangsheng took people to send the engineers back to the room. Fortunately, they bought such a large manor, otherwise it would not be able to accommodate so many people. Probably really tired, many engineers slept until before dinner. Gu Chang didn't rest for long, and was drinking tea and chatting with Li Qing downstairs. Teacher Gu, why don't you sleep a little longer? Li Qing smiled and poured a cup of tea for Gu Chang. Alas, I'm old, and I sleep less. Why should I sleep for a long time when I'm alive? I will sleep forever after I die. Gu Chang took a sip of tea and nodded with satisfaction. Mr. Li. Li Qing waved his hand quickly, don't call me that, old man. Just call me Xiao Li or Ah Cheng. Gu Chang thought for a while, I'll be bold and call you Ah Cheng. Hearing the word Ah Cheng, Li Qing felt a little touched. He hadn't heard the name Ah Cheng for a long time. Since Grandpa and Brother Kun were gone, people's names for him have gradually changed to Brother Ching, Big Brother, Master Ching, Boss. Ah Ching, I said I participated in the design of figure 160, do you believe it? Gu Chang's words interrupted Li Qing's memories. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 502. Li Qing already knew through Tianyangsheng that Gu Chang was a national treasure and had a high status in the aircraft manufacturing industry in his hometown. But I have never heard that he participated in the design of figure 160. Haha, I once studied in Maoxiong. At that time, Mao Xiong was really powerful. Gu Chang had a look of nostalgia on his face. People who came from our era have deep feelings for Big Brother, he lamented. The early woolly bears were of great help to their hometown. Material assistance, expert assistance, etc. helped the new country of China to rapidly develop various undertakings. However, the subsequent withdrawal of aid, coupled with various difficulties in international and trade matters, gradually eroded this goodwill. Nowadays, people only have regrets about the furry bears. It is incredible that such a huge country has disappeared. I know, Li Qing smiled, but now Da Mao and Er Mao are not friendly to their hometown. Gu Chang nodded. This is also the great thing about beautiful country. Mao has become more westernized. If this continues, sooner or later he will become a puppet of beautiful country. The new President Mao is very powerful when he comes to power, and his style of doing things is a bit like Mao Xiong before it was disbanded. Gu Chang sees things more clearly than the average person. Li Qing nodded. If the butterfly effect did not occur, Gu Chang's inference would be correct. That's why I want to transport the 2-160 back as quickly as possible. Every time the country increases its strength, it will be able to take more international initiative in the future. Gu Chang sighed, I won't live for many years. I saw the country becoming stronger before I closed my eyes. Yes, you have to take good care of yourself. We will definitely become stronger in 20 or 30 years. Li Qing spoke firmly. Oh, so sure. Yeah, I promise, if I'm wrong, I'll give you a better plane. Li Qing looked at Gu Chang and joked. Haha, I have to live until then for that plane. Gu Chang laughed after hearing Li Qing's words. The two talked a lot throughout the afternoon, covering everything from the international situation to the difficulties facing the country. The two stopped communicating until the dinner started. The dinner is a standard Mao-style dinner prepared by Li Qing, Rang Tian Yang Shen, and others, so that the guests can experience the exotic flavor. Big meat skewers, cabbage rolls, wheat berry pudding, hash browns, and the most classic red cabbage soup. The group of people chatted and laughed, and under the influence of alcohol, everyone became familiar with each other. The next morning, Gu Chang couldn't wait to wake up the unkempt engineers and started to get into the car arranged by Li Qing to head to the location of the plane. This is Mao's military base. Gu Chang looked at the military base not far away with a shocked expression. Li Qing said nothing, just smiled and nodded. Gu Chang opened his mouth in surprise and stared blankly at the soldiers standing guard opposite, saluted and let the car go. He was so surprised. He didn't expect that Li Qing was much more capable than he thought. Even the Mao military base has free access, and he thought the 2-160 would be hidden in an inconspicuous warehouse by Li Qing. Until they arrived at the warehouse where the White Swan was located, these engineers had not yet come out of their shock. The door of the warehouse opened slowly, and they focused their attention on the White Swan they were looking forward to. They all looked inside. Li Qing asked someone to turn on the lights, and Gu Chang walked into the warehouse impatiently, looking at the White Swan in front of him as if he was seeing his lover. Although the White Swan covered in dust looks like an ugly duckling, it still cannot stop the fiery eyes of this group of people. Okay. Great, Gu Chang looked at the White Swan in front of him excitedly. Only now did he believe that everything was true. After 10 minutes, everyone calmed down before discussing how to dismantle the White Swan. Li Qing didn't talk much, he just watched quietly. He didn't understand these professional things, so he just let the professionals do it. A group of people started making trouble inside and outside, and Gu Chang even climbed up the ladder to the cockpit, causing a group of engineers to yell and scream, for fear of knocking Gu Chang out. Gu Chang ignored the others and fumbled for various instruments like treasures. These were all things worth more to him than his life. After searching for a long time, his eyes slowly became serious, and he looked at the 2-160 inside and out carefully. It's different. They changed the parameters. Obviously, the 2-160 in front of him is different from the 2-160 he participated in the design at that time. It should be that the engineer modified the parameters in the later stage. Although according to his own ideas, he could still bring the white swan home, he was afraid that there would be any missing points, especially the soul of the 2-160, the NK-32 engine. Gu Chang frowned and hurried to Li Qing's side, whispering, "King, do you have the drawings of 2-160? Li Qing shook his head regretfully after hearing this. He also asked Renikov for it in person, but unfortunately the last drawing had been destroyed under the supervision of the beautiful country. What's wrong? In some places, there are no specific parameters, so I can't be sure. You know, airplanes are very precise. Even if a screw is lost, a big accident will occur." Gu Chang said with a solemn expression. Li Qing also frowned and glanced at 2-160, "It seems this thing is more difficult to deal with than I thought. There are two ways now. One is to have someone drive the whole aircraft back. The other is to find the blueprints of the aircraft," Gu Chang suggested. Li Qing shook his head and rejected the first suggestion immediately. The whole aircraft cannot be driven back. This is a strategic bomber. China and Russia are thousands of kilometers apart. The countries in between will not allow bombers to enter at will. Besides, neither the United States nor Russia will allow the 2-160 to be obtained by China. There is only one way, that is to find the blueprints of the 2-160, but the problem is that the blueprints of the 2-160 have been burned. Teacher Gu, don't worry. You can study how to disassemble it first. As for the blueprints, I will do my best to find them, Li Qing comforted. Since the blueprints cannot be found, then find the person who designed the blueprints. Gu Chang glanced at Li Qing's expression and knew what he was thinking. Remind, the first person to design 2-160 was my teacher Tupolev, who died in the 1970s. Li Qing nodded when he heard this. He didn't believe that he couldn't find engineers who participated in the design of 2-160 in Ermao. Arranged Tian Yangsheng and others to protect the experts and engineers here, while Li Qing took a car to find Ike. This guy must have a way. The Rolls-Royce soon arrived at Ike's manor villa. "Tian, Qing, this is the first time you have taken the initiative to come to my house." Ike laughed and hugged Li Qing. He has been busy with election matters these days. After all, the election is getting closer and closer. He can't let him wait for another year because the money has not been delivered. "Hey, I'm afraid of delaying your business." Li Qing patted Ike on the back and joked. "Speak. I know you don't come to the temple for no reason," Ike asked with a smile. "Ahem, help me search for the drawings of 2-160. Li Qing was not embarrassed and blurted out directly after being pointed out by Ike. Ike thought it was a big deal. It was not difficult for him. As long as Mao had it, he could find it. "Don't worry, leave it to me," Ike agreed immediately. But it was more difficult than he thought, mainly because Mao was honest and did not keep any drawings. 2 days later, Li Qing received a slightly apologetic call from Ike. "Qing, I'm sorry. Mao really didn't have it, but I found someone who might be able to get the drawings through him." "Who?" Li Qing asked curiously. "Valentine, the chief designer of Figure 160. But he now lives in Daimao." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 503. Valentine, Li Qing muttered to himself. However, his brows did frown. It was indeed bad news that someone was in Daimao. The specific situation needed to be checked by Tian Yangsheng. It would be best if he could invite someone. If he couldn't, it would be great if he could kidnap someone. Time was urgent, so Li Qing didn't delay and directly asked Tian Yangsheng to take people to Daimao Moscow. He ordered Tian Yangsheng to invite someone, and if he couldn't come, he could just bring the drawings back. Tian Yangsheng led people directly to Moscow. Moscow in November was colder than Kiev. Without the mountains to block it, the cold wind from Siberia was blowing south with all its strength, and it was as painful as a knife on people's faces. Even Tian Yangsheng, who had lived in Ermao for so many years, was a little uncomfortable with this kind of weather. "Brother, according to the address, it should be here." Tian Yanji stamped his feet and looked at the address in his hand. Tian Yangsheng looked at the shabby cabin with a puzzled look. When they came here, they thought they had gone to the wrong place. It is incredible that the chief designer of 2-160 actually lives in such a simple place. You know, such a person is a national treasure wherever he is. The group confirmed through inquiries that Valentine did live here, but the people around him didn't know his identity at all, which was a bit intriguing. Tian Yangsheng and others had no choice but to wait by the house, hoping to wait for Valentine. It was not until the sky gradually darkened and the dim street lights on the street lit up that they found an old man with white hair, holding a paper bag and leaning on a crutch with one hand, walking slowly towards the side with a staggering step. Tian Yangsheng saw the old man took out the key and was about to open the cabin, and then he dared to confirm that the old man was Valentine. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Valentine?" Tian Yangsheng led people to the old man. The old man raised his head in astonishment, as if he hadn't heard anyone greet him for a long time. "Well, I am." Perhaps Valentine was even more surprised to see a few Asian faces suddenly. "Hello, I'm from New World Company. Can we go in and talk?" Tian Yangsheng smiled and tried to make himself look kind. Valentine didn't know what New World was, maybe it was a commercial company. "Sorry, I don't have anything to talk to you about." Valentine coughed lightly, shook his head, and continued to open the old lock. Click, the lock opened. Tian Yangsheng was a little helpless. "We are Chinese, and hope to talk to you." The indifferent Valentine heard the word China, his body paused, and the action of closing the door froze. Only to hear Valentine sigh, "Come in and talk." Tian Yangsheng was delighted and quickly led people into the wooden house. The wooden house was not much warmer than the outside, and even because there was no sunlight all year round, there was a biting cold. There were many miscellaneous items in the house, and occasionally some drawings or something. The most eye-catching thing was a photo frame hanging on the wall, and inside the photo frame was a red flag medal. But the room was filled with the smell of old people. Valentine put the paper bag on the table, and then Tian Yangsheng noticed the two big words on the paper bag: relief. A trace of bitterness flashed in Tian Yangsheng's eyes. After all, this man was also a meritorious person of the Russian Bear, so why did he fall to this point? Valentine seemed to feel Tian Yangsheng's gaze and smiled. "Please sit down, from the East Davarish." After that, he took a few cups from the shelf next to him and took out a bottle of vodka from the paper bag. "The weather is a bit cold, I only have this to help you drive away the cold." Tian Yangsheng stammered, "Scientists like you should not be treated like this. Such people should be treated like treasures no matter which country they go to." Valentine smiled, "My motherland is gone, and now I am just a shell. My soul had already disappeared at the moment when my motherland disintegrated. I am now a stateless person." Stateless person, this is how Valentine defined himself. He believed that no matter how similar the current Mao was to the Mao Bear, it was not the motherland for which he had devoted his life. Valentine raised his glass and saluted Tian Yangsheng and others from afar. "Cheers to you, Davarish from afar." He gulped down the vodka in the glass. "Ha, I really envy you. Your red flag is so bright, and it is getting stronger and stronger like a flame." Valentine's eyes began to blur, and he thought of the motherland that made him shed tears on his pillow at midnight. He calmed down and raised his head. "Tell me, what do you want to see me for?" He knew that these people must have come to him for something related to airplanes, and all he could show now was the knowledge in his mind. Tian Yangsheng swallowed the vodka in his mouth and felt much warmer. "Mr. Valentine, I want to invite you to Ermau for a trip to 2-160. Tian Yangsheng smiled. Valentine knew that he guessed right, and the masterpiece he was most proud of was the 2-160. 2-160? Wasn't it destroyed under the supervision of the United States? Valentine was a little confused. "There is another one." Tian Yangsheng briefly explained the situation. Of course, he didn't say a word about the confidential matters. After listening to Tian Yangsheng's words, Valentine said nothing, and the expression on his face was not as relaxed as before. "Mr. Valentine, you don't want your masterpiece to be only displayed in a military museum, right? You know, the 2-160 is the most advanced strategic bomber at this stage. Are you willing to let it gather dust in a museum?" Tian Yangsheng's words moved Valentine. The 2-160 is like his child. Who would want their child to rot in a museum? At least, let it be reborn. Isn't that the meaning of your research? Tian Yangsheng continued. Valentine took a deep breath, looked up at Tian Yangsheng, drank half a glass of vodka again, and said in a slightly hoarse voice, okay, I hope you can do what you say and let it be reborn again." Tian Yangsheng was relieved when he heard this, and he knew that Valentine agreed. "Wait a minute, I'll sort out the information." Valentine slowly stood up and began to sort out the drawings on the desk not far away. It turned out that he was doing research under such difficult circumstances. Not for anyone, just because this makes him feel that he is still alive. Tian Yangsheng called for help and soon finished sorting. Before leaving, Valentine put some small change of rubles on the table, which was his rent for this month, and the landlord would come to collect it. The journey was smooth. Tian Yangsheng was afraid that the Russian Federal Security Bureau would suddenly show up, but it didn't happen. It seems that Russia really didn't pay attention to the chief designer of the 2-160. Not long after, Valentine boarded Li Qing's private plane. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 504. In the past 2 days, engineers from my hometown began to dismantle the unimportant parts of the White Swan. They did not dare to touch the more important cabin control system and engine. Gu Chang was also very anxious. Every time he saw Li Qing, he would mention the drawings several times. "Teacher, take a break and drink some water. Leave these things to us," Sima Sa said as he looked down at Gu Chang, who was removing the screws. In the past 2 days, Gu Chang not only directed the engineers to work, but also joined the work to save time, which made Sima Sa feel distressed. After all, he is an elderly man in his 70s, and his work intensity is greater than that of young people. Gu Chang took the water handed over by Sima Sa, drank a big sip, stood up and stretched his body. "Leave it to you. I am worried. I want to take this big baby home myself. Xiao Sa, you must remember what I taught you. It is just a reference. We must have our own strategic bomber in China." Gu Chang held his waist and pointed to the 2-160 under his feet. Looking at the teacher's sweaty forehead and the silver hair on his temples soaked with sweat, Sima Sa felt a surge of bitterness in his nose. He smiled casually. "I remember, teacher. I hope you can lead us to develop our own strategic bomber." Gu Chang didn't say anything but smiled. Except for the key equipment, the disassembly of other aspects was done very quickly. The engineers were very motivated and didn't return to the manor until very late every day. "Old Gu, who did I invite back?" Gu Chang heard Li Qing's hearty laughter as soon as he entered the door. He looked closely and saw a Slav with silver hair and a cane standing next to Li Cheng. He frowned and looked at him carefully, and then he found out from his eyebrows that this person was actually his senior brother when he was in the Moxiang Design Institute. Valentine? Are you senior brother Valentine? Gu Chang tried to call out. Haha, Gu, I didn't expect you still remember me. Valentine laughed happily. When Gu Chang was not here, Li Qing talked about Gu Chang when chatting with him. He realized that this Gu Chang was the junior brother who studied under the teacher with him. 20 years, more than 20 years, right? Valentine held Gu Chang's hands. More than that, more than 30 years. The last time we met was at the teacher's funeral, Gu Chang said excitedly. After a long separation, both of them had tears in their eyes and kept looking at each other's aging faces. The two chatted for a long time before they remembered the people around them. Ah Ching, thank you. Otherwise, we might not meet in our lifetime. Gu Chang wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Because the relationship between China and the Mao Bear was tense at the time, the two stopped writing letters. Although Gu Chang also used his connections to look for him, he found nothing. Especially after the disintegration of the Mao Bear, he didn't know which country the senior brother went to. Teacher Gu, you are too polite. It is a good opportunity to invite Mr. Valentine this time. I believe that dismantling the 2-160 will not be a problem. Li Qing smiled. In addition, he had other intentions. He wanted to take time to tell Gu Chang about Valentine's recent situation, and if possible, he wanted to invite Valentine to his hometown. Come, let's eat and talk, Li Qing invited. Since Valentine came, the dismantling of the 2-160 has progressed quickly. Valentine is very familiar with the 2-160, and even has deeply memorized its parameters in his mind. Under his command, the engineers do not have to be restrained for fear of breaking things. Li Qing stood at the door of the warehouse and looked at the busy scene. He called Gu Chang over when he was free. Teacher Gu, Mr. Valentine has actually been living on the minimum living allowance in De Mao. Li Qing sighed. Gu Chang was stunned when he heard this, and then his face slowly showed anger. Is this how they treat the merits of the bear? Alas, the bear has disintegrated for more than 10 years, who cares about the merits in the past? Besides, you know the policies of the bear in the past. Li Qing shook his head regretfully. The bear changed after Putin came to power. In the past few years, it actually took the path of westernization. The sad thing is that the Western countries led by the United States are unwilling to accept them at all, and even do not allow them to join NATO. The color revolution is a complete conspiracy, the purpose of which is to disintegrate the bear. Gu Chang was speechless and sighed deeply. I personally feel that I can try to see if Mr. Valentine is willing to go to China. Li Qing expressed his thoughts. Gu Chang's eyes lit up after hearing Li Qing's words. Hey, this is a good idea. You know, if the hometown gets such a scientist, it is tantamount to adding wings to the tiger, and the value is immeasurable. Gu Chang's eyes turned and he had an idea in his mind. He would fool his senior brother this time. In the next few days, Gu Chang kept hanging around Valentine, telling him about the development of New China whenever he had time. Until one morning, Li Qing, who was running early, heard the quarrel between the two. Gu Chang, don't mention this matter again. I will not go to China, and I will not betray my motherland. A roar came from the house. Senior brother Valentine, how can it be a betrayal? We really need scientists like you. Gu Chang's voice was not small. Don't say it anymore, I don't want to listen. After this matter is over, I will go back to Moscow. Back to Moscow. Back to the rented cabin. Yes, I want to die on the land of my motherland even if I die. Li Qing shook his head. This is not the way to persuade people. These two are stubborn old men. Ahem. He walked to the door of Valentine's room and pretended to cough. The quarrel in the room stopped immediately. Li Qing knocked on the door and entered. The two looked at each other angrily. Seeing Li Qing come in, they turned their heads to the other side at the same time. He, I heard everything you quarreled outside. Li Qing did not hide it. What? Mr. Li Qing, do you want to be a lobbyist too? Valentine said unhappily. Now he didn't like Li Qing either, thinking that he and Gu Chang were birds of a feather. Li Qing was not angry either, but sat directly on the sofa and wiped the sweat with a towel around his neck. Excuse me, Mr. Valentine, your motherland is gone. Gu Chang saw Li Qing speak so bluntly, and his cheeks twitched unconsciously. Valentine wanted to refute it, but it was a fact that could not be refuted. He sat down in the chair dejectedly without saying a word. His waist, which was originally straight, suddenly bent down. Big Mao, second Mao, third Mao, which one inherited the soul of the Mao bear? They only inherited the land and heritage of the Mao bear. China is different. Although China was brought up by the Mao bear, it has its own way to go. Now the whole of China is red, and no color revolution or conspiracy trajectory can shake it. Don't you want to go and take a look? Hearing Li Qing's words, the expression on Valentine's face changed a little. Li Qing stood up and walked to the east window, looking at the boundless land, his eyes blurred. Mr. Valentine, if you still want to chase the red star, go to the east. Cross the Dnieper River, over the Ural Mountains, to the end of Siberia, there are still burning sparks. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 505. Li Qing's words not only moved Gu Chang, but also made Valentine fall into deep thought. After a long time, Valentine sighed deeply, his slightly trembling lips showing his uneasiness. His eyes were wet because of Li Qing's words. Alas. A long sigh, okay, I'll just treat it as a vacation. I also want to see the red star. What he was thinking about was that if Dongfang was not as good as Gu Chang and Li Qing said, he would come back even if he died. At this time, in his heart, Oriental spark is already another inheritance of the motherland. After hearing Valentine's words, Li Qing and Gu Chang looked at each other and smiled. Especially Gu Chang, as a professional, he knows that Valentine's value to the country is immeasurable. Don't worry, senior brother. It's up to you to go, and you will never be disappointed. Gu Chang grabbed Valentine's hands and said excitedly. Valentine also nodded inexplicably. With Valentine's help, the dismantling operation of White Swan went much smoother than expected. Most of the key facilities were completed in just 1 week, and some have been separately loaded and unloaded onto ships and are now on their way home. A few days later, all the equipment was shipped away, and Gu Chang and the engineers had time to take a rest. Li Qing prepared a rich dinner for them. Gu Chang was afraid that the students would be uncomfortable with his presence, so he directly took Li Qing and Valentine to sit down by the fire to chat with them with wine and food. At the beginning of December, Mao had officially entered the freezing period. Heavy snow fell like goose feathers in front of the window, and the fire reflected the faces of the three of them. Ah, I haven't felt this comfortable for a long time. Gu Chang was holding a glass of wine and looking at the snowy scene outside the window, lost in thought. The last time he had a night chat around the fire was when Mao Xiong was studying abroad. In the blink of an eye, he was already 70 years old. These people have been busy with their careers, and the country has been suffering from internal and external troubles. He is not qualified to enjoy a stable life, and he can't wait to spend every minute and every second on research. Li Qing sat on the ground, leaning on the backrest and smiled. Yes, I haven't calmed down yet. Teacher Gu and Mr. Valentine, please stay with me for a while. Gu Chang picked up the wine glass, clinked it with Li Qing, and took a sip. No, no. I'm afraid that if you stay here for a long time, you won't be able to miss Shu, ahem. Gu Chang seemed to have choked on the strong wine and started coughing. Li Qing stepped forward and patted his back gently. He felt that the old man was very thin and could clearly feel his spine. Sima Sa had been paying attention to Gu Chang, and when he saw Gu Chang coughing, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Teacher, please drink less." Gu Chang raised his head and glared at him, "Go back and drink." Sima Sa replaced Li Qing and patted Gu Chang a few times before going back. At this time, Valentine also smiled and said, "Yes, you can't stay here for a long time. These are all sugar-coated bullets of capitalism." Then the three of them stopped and laughed. Then Jujin and the others started chatting, talking about everything from capitalism to communism, from regional conflicts to international situations, from history and culture to alien invasion, and they talked about whatever they thought of without any scruples. "Mr. Li Qing, I want to ask you a question. As a wealthy businessman, why are you so patriotic? You obviously don't have to worry about these things." Valentine spread his hands and asked. Li Qing knew that Valentine meant to ask him why he did these thankless things. These are not only thankless, but also relatively risky things. Gu Chang put down the wine glass in his hand and tilted his head to look at Li Qing, obviously curious about this question. He has seen many patriotic people, and there are indeed very few people like Li Qing who don't care about personal gains and losses. Li Qing chuckled and looked at the flames in the fireplace in silence for a moment. "Me? I'm not for anyone, I'm for myself." As soon as these words came out, the two of them were even more curious. They knew that everything Li Qing had done was far beyond the scope of a patriot. Gu Chang and Valentine didn't speak, waiting for Li Qing's next words. "If something I do can affect the motherland and help the motherland, maybe I didn't come to this world in vain." This sentence sounded like an answer to Valentine's question, so it was not what Li Qing said to himself. There is nothing he can do in the other world, but if he is capable in this parallel world, he must change some things within his own capabilities. Listening to the crackling sound of burning wood, Li Qing drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. Gu Chang and Valentine nodded thoughtfully after listening to Li Qing's words. "Come, cheers for ourselves and our ideals." Gu Chang raised his wine glass and said to Li Qing and Valentine. Li Qing had a black line on his face. "No, you two didn't drink just now." "Haha, you didn't say cheers, you were bored, who's to blame?" "That is." Li Qing looked at the two little old men who were smiling like children speechlessly, and poured himself another glass. Amid laughter and laughter, the dinner lasted until late. It snowed all night. Almost everyone woke up at noon the next day and hurried to the airport after lunch. "Teacher Gu, do you really want to stay for a few more days?" Li Qing advised again. He still hopes that Gu Chang can stay for a longer period of time. Through this period of communication, he likes this somewhat stubborn little old man. In Li Qing's opinion, this old man and Mr. Huo have different personalities. Mr. Huo is always gentle and polite, and he always looks calm and indifferent when facing anything. Gu Chang is different. He always speaks directly. It's not that he doesn't understand the ways of the world, but he doesn't want to waste time on these aspects. "Haha, no. It's too cold here, I can't get used to it." "Ah Qing, you must tell me when you arrive in Beijing. The braised pork in the institute is quite delicious," Gu Chang said with a smile. "Oh? Then I have to try it," Li Qing agreed with a smile. "Mr. Valentine, you can also call me if you need anything in China," Li Qing said to Valentine. Valentine smiled and nodded. This sentence made Gu Chang glare at him. "What's the matter with me? Can my senior brother be wronged in China? Okay, let's go." After saying that, he turned and walked towards the private plane prepared by Li Qing, but seemed to have forgotten something, and turned his head and walked to Li Qing's side. "Take care, Ah Cheng. The country will not forget any meritorious service." After that, Gu Chang opened his arms and hugged Li Qing, which was rare. Li Qing could clearly feel the old man's frailty, Teacher Gu, take care of yourself. Don't forget, if I lose in 20 years, I will give you a plane that is better than the 2-160. I remember. Let's go, Gu Chang patted Li Qing's arm and smiled. Only when the plane disappeared did Li Qing turn around and leave with his men. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 506. Brother Li, I really didn't expect that you actually found the chief designer of 2-160. The most important thing is that Mr. Valentine decided to settle in China temporarily. Li Qing held the phone a little further away, Qi Gang's voice was too loud. Li Qing and Gu Chang had discussed Valentine's going to China. In order to prevent someone from leaking the news, this matter was not mentioned for the time being. After Valentine arrived in China, Qi Gang and others knew that there was such a big surprise. As soon as Mr. Valentine was arranged, Qi Gang called in a hurry. Haha, this matter is also a coincidence. The main reason is that the development of my hometown in recent years has also attracted the attention of Mr. Valentine, Li Qing said modestly. By the way, did you receive the 3 missile frigates? Qi Gang sent the 3 missile frigates a few days ago, and also sent instructors to do some training. Received. The autonomous province also called and told us about this matter. Now the military strength of the Chinese autonomous province is developing rapidly, especially the navy. Li Qing knew that in order to seize the initiative, he had to vigorously develop the navy. Because most of Southeast Asia is an island country, the deterrent power of the navy is much greater than that of the army. This time, 3 more missile frigates have been added, which has increased the combat power of the navy. That's good, that's good. I won't say much about my thanks. We all remember it in our hearts, Qi Gang said solemnly. Li Qing smiled. He could imagine Qi Gang's serious expression now. The two chatted for a few more words before hanging up the phone. The original equipment of the Varian and the White Swan have been quietly transported to their hometown. Now only the empty shell of the Varian is left. Fortunately, the auction date is very close, and Li Qing and his team don't have to wait for a long time. Renikov has been busy with this matter during this period, and he wants to get it done before the election. In fact, he just wants to send Li Qing away quickly. He doesn't know what will happen if he stays in Ermau. He has only been here for a few months, and he has joined forces with the oligarchs to get rid of the president. Although he also had a disagreement with President Ba Xin, the energy shown by Li Qing made him a little nervous. Fortunately, everything was carried out according to his plan, and there was no vulgar plot at the auction of the Variag. In the end, Li Qing bought the Variag for $20 million, of which $2 million was used to secretly buy the Variag drawings, which was why Li Qing was willing to pay a high price. At the banquet after the auction. Haha, congratulations to Mr. Li Qing, you got what you wanted. Renikov raised the champagne in his hand and laughed. Haha, congratulations. Li Qing did not let Renikov work in vain, and had already given him a sum of money in his personal name. But in this auction of the Variag, Renikov made the most profit. In the future, there will be opportunities for more cooperation. Li Qing smiled and clinked glasses with Renikov. Okay, Renikov smiled and drank the champagne in the glass. Li Qing looked at the dignitaries at the banquet who were getting along well with each other, and suddenly felt that the country of Ermau was a little sad. This banquet represents the top leaders of Ermau's government and the military, but now Li Qing can see that at least 1/3 of them are Jews with hooked noses and obvious beards. But Ermau is still like a stupid roe deer and doesn't know it. Sooner or later, the Slavs will become the minority of this country. He shook his head and said, forget it, this is not what he should consider. There are many unknown conspiracies hidden behind this world. After getting the Varian, Li Qing had already prepared 11 tugboats. In the previous life, there were 2 tugboats. Li Qing felt that the 2 tugboats took too long, so it would be better to go with 11 tugboats directly, which would be faster. Li Qing rushed to the Black Sea shipyard without stopping. Although he had expected the Varian in his heart, he was still excited when he saw it. I saw the Varian quietly parked in the Black Sea, and the rusty hull showed the vicissitudes of these years. The Varian, with a length of 304 meters and a full load displacement of 67,500 tons, was like a huge monster in front of me. It's really big. Crow scratched his head and looked at the Varian in the distance. Zhang Dongzhou also smacked his lips. Nonsense, selling scrap metal can sell for $5 million. What do you think? Li Qing waved his hand to let Tian Yangsheng come over. Ashen, it's up to you to transport the Varian back to China. Li Qing arranged to nominally transport it back to the Java Chinese Autonomous Province to be converted into a gambling ship. In fact, he had already planned to give it to China on the grounds that it ran aground in the South China Sea. Anyway, the reason was there, and it was up to the individual to believe it or not. Brother, don't worry. I guarantee with my life that there will be no problems. Tian Yangsheng patted his chest excitedly. This is an aircraft carrier. I am proud to be involved in it, and maybe I can leave my name in history. Looking at the envious expressions of Crow and Zhang Dongzhou, Tian Yangsheng raised his head and chest and followed Li Qing to the front. Tisk, you're so arrogant. Damn, you're such a snob. Crow and Zhang Dongzhou said in unison, and this time they stood on the same front for the first time. Huh? It's understandable that a Chinese wants to go down in history, but why are you, a Korean, so upset? Crow thought for a long time before coming to his senses. There's something wrong with Goshiur. Why, I can't become a Chinese citizen. I'll change my nationality when I get married to my girlfriend. Zhang Dongzhou rolled his eyes at Crow and ignored him. Crow looked at Zhang Dongzhou, who was walking further and further away, and patted his head. Hey, Shiur, my surname is Chen. When you naturalize, please use my surname. The Varian had been obtained, but Li Qing still did not relax. He returned to the manor and sat on a chair in the study, staring at the world map in a daze. The journey of the Varian back home in the previous life was extremely difficult. He couldn't remember the specific details. It seemed that he was blackmailed by the Turks for $1 billion, and he seemed to be stumbling upon the pyramids later. I don't know if this situation will happen again in this life, so he has to make plans in advance. Tian Yangsheng took several brothers and his mercenaries to board the tugboat that day. In addition to 11 tugboats, Li Qing also arranged 5 supply ships and 1 fire boat to ensure the safety of the Varian. The Varia was slowly sailing on the Black Sea under the tugboat. Because the Black Sea is an inland sea, the tugboat did not dare to sail at full speed. After all, the Varia was 2 tonnage and had no power system, so it was not easy to slow down. After 2 days of marching on the sea, Tian Yangsheng and others' excitement has not passed. No matter what, they have participated in such a big event, and they feel some inexplicable pride in their hearts. Brother, if the Varian successfully reaches your hometown, your names and your eldest brother's names will probably be recorded in history. Tian Yanji stood on the deck of the tugboat and said to Tian Yangsheng excitedly. Hey, we got the surname Tian Yang by ourselves, but we didn't expect that there would be a chance to be recorded in history. Tian Yangsheng did not hide the joy on his face. The 7 brothers and sisters were all war orphans, and they didn't even have names. As the eldest brother, he gave himself a natural surname. Big brother gave me all this, Tian Yangsheng muttered in a low voice. This mission was not difficult in his opinion, but the eldest brother still gave it to him. One reason may be that he is familiar with Eastern Europe, and the other reason may be that the eldest brother also wanted him to enter China's side. Tian Yangshen was thinking about it when he was poked by Tian Yanji beside him. Brother, what are those little white dots in the distance? Tian Yangshen took the telescope handed over by Tian Yanjin and finally saw the small white dot in the distance clearly. Warship. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 507. Turkic Warship. Tian Yangshen put down the telescope in his hand and said in a deep voice. His expression was not very good, and the Turkic warship was obviously heading towards him. I don't know what they are going to do. The Turkic fleet consisted of 2 destroyers and 1 frigate, forming a triangle and gradually moving towards outflanking the Varian. 20 minutes later, the Turkic fleet slowly approached the tugboat. Tian Yangshen and others had just received a request from the Turks on the radio to stop the ship for inspection. A Turkic officer and soldiers with guns and ammunition boarded the tugboat where Tian Yangshen and others were. Tian Yangshen squinted at the Turkic officer who was slowly walking towards him. The officer was young, about 40 years old, with a well-proportioned figure and a slight dignity. But what made Tian Yangshen and others unhappy was his slightly aggressive eyes. Suppressing the dissatisfaction in his heart, Tian Yangshen walked towards him and said, "Hello, Colonel Attitude." The colonel named Attitude simply ignored Tian Yangshen's right hand, and instead looked around at the tugboat, occasionally glancing at the huge Varian behind it. Tian Yangshen's face changed slightly, but he still suppressed the anger rising in his heart. Attitude turned around and looked at Tian Yangshen and others with some arrogance. "Chinese people? What are you doing here?" He was asking questions knowingly. Almost everyone knew about the bidding of the Varian, and Turks, as neighboring countries, certainly knew about it. "Haha, Mr. Attitude, we are about to transport the Varian back and transform it into a gambling boat. We have already processed the pass." Tian Yangshen took out the Bosporus pass that Mao helped to apply for. Attitude didn't even look at it, and waved his hand. "Pass? I don't know what kind of pass. I only know that this is in the Turkic Sea, and I have the right to ensure the safety of our people. I suspect that you are suspected of endangering our national security." Attitude's words made Tian Yangshen frown slightly and waved towards Tian Yanji. Tian Yanji hurriedly walked away with the brown paper bag in his hand. "Brother." Tian Yangshen nodded, took the paper bag and put it into Attitude's hand. "It's not disrespectful to mean something small. I believe Mr. Attitude also knows the way of doing things in our new world. We are very friendly to our friends." Tian Yangshen squinted his eyes and stared at Attitude. The meaning of his words was very clear. It depends on what Attitude wants to do. Attitude shook the paper bag in his hand and opened it to see that it was full of US dollar bills. He chuckled and took out a wad of US bills from the paper bag. "Haha, you also want to bribe the Turkic Navy. You are breaking the law, do you know?" The smile on Tian Yangshen's face disappeared, and he looked into Attitude's eyes with a sullen face. "Mr. Attitude, I advise you to think about it again. Even if you don't think about yourself, you should think about it for your family, right?" Tian Yangshen felt that the Turkic Navy's arrival was very strange from beginning to end. Even checking for smuggling was a matter for the Turkic Coast Guard. These people must have been instructed by someone to come this time. Attitude smiled and showed his standard 8 teeth. "Sir, can I think that you are threatening me?" No, Mr. Attitude, I'm just caring about your family." Tian Yangshen looked at Attitude with a smile. At this time, the soldier inspecting the ship came over and said in Attitude's ear, "Sir, no contraband was found." Attitude nodded and threw the paper bag in his hand on the ground. "Haha, forget it this time, we will see you next time." Tian Yangshen looked at the backs of Attitude and others and fell into deep thought. Although he didn't know what Attitude meant by meeting him next time, he was sure that the road ahead would be difficult. "Brother, what do these people mean?" Tian Yanji asked next to him. Tian Yangshen shook his head. "I don't know. I have to tell my brother about this, I'm afraid." Tian Yangshen did not continue, but everyone else knew what he meant, and everyone had a sullen face. This trip was not as easy as imagined. Tian Yangshen did not dare to delay and immediately called the boss Li Qing. Li Qing, who was arranging other matters, picked up the vibrating cell phone. Hello? Ashen. Brother, we just encountered the Turkic Navy. Tian Yangshen recounted the incident from beginning to end, adding some of his own conjectures in the middle. After Li Qing heard what he said, the expression on his face became serious. He expected that the Turks would cause trouble, but he did not expect that the other side would not give them any face. I have a pass issued by Ermao, but it doesn't work, Li Qing asked in a deep voice. Tian Yangshen shook his head. Brother, he didn't look. Li Qing closed his eyes and knocked on the table. Okay, you continue walking. I will find a way to do this. Putting down the phone in his hand, Li Qing said thoughtfully, sure enough, the beautiful country will not let the Varian be transported back easily, even with my face. He believed that this time it would be the same as in the previous life, and the beautiful country must be causing trouble, so the Turks would be so unscrupulous. Even if Renikov coordinates this matter, it will not help. Li Qing's eyes narrowed, and he couldn't help but use the layout from the previous few days. Turkic Navy building. How is it? Adatu, the admiral sitting on the chair, asked Adatu in front of him. General, don't worry. They don't even dare to say anything when I say it. Their great reputation is really wasted, Adatu said with a hint of disdain. Everything Adatu did was instructed by the admiral, so he spoke to Tian Yangshen and others in an unscrupulous manner. Facing Tian Yangshen's threat, Adatu sneered, he would not succumb to the other party's threat. Don't worry, this matter is agreed by the higher UPS. There is the instruction of the United States. The admiral waved his hand and smiled. Besides, this is Eastern Europe, their hands can't reach here. But I'm still worried about my wife and daughter. You know, these people do things without any worries. Adatu is also a little worried about his family, and this matter must be prevented. Seeing Adatu's face full of solemnity, the admiral comforted, it's okay, this is the Turks, they dare not do too much. I'm afraid they will use some other means. You know, there are too many ways to kill people in the New World. Adatu is still a little worried. Since the New World Hotel has included the killer business, under the leadership of John and Arthur, the killer business of the New World Hotel has gradually tended to keep pace with the mainland hotel. Although he was arrogant, Adatu was not a fool. He was more or less afraid of the New World. The admiral thought for a while and said, how about this? You should take your wife and daughter to live in the military camp for a while. Adatu thought about it and nodded. As long as this matter was over, not only would his wife and daughter be safe, but he would also have the hope of getting a promotion and a raise. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 508. Adatu walked out of the naval building. He planned to go to the suburbs to pick up his wife and daughter and live in the military camp for a while. Thinking about things, he absent-mindedly pressed the car's remote control. The car parked on the side of the road made a loud noise, and the car keys accidentally fell to the ground. Adatu smiled to himself, then bent down to pick up the dropped key. Boom! An explosion sounded, and the entire car was blown to pieces. Adatu's face was also scratched with blood by broken glass. He sat on the ground in shock, looking at the car that turned into a ball of fire in fear. But I was filled with fear. If I hadn't picked up the key, based on the time of the explosion, I would have been sitting in the car. Bastard, bastard, Adatu's face turned pale. He knew who was responsible for the explosion. These people were rushing to kill him. At this time, colleagues who heard the noise ran out and helped Adatu, who was in shock. How's Adatu? Are you okay? God, what's going on? Who is so bold as to carry out an assassination next to the Navy building? A group of people gathered around Adatu, looking at the burned-out private car and discussing it one after another. Adatu said nothing, thanked the colleague who helped him up, and turned back to the Navy building. At this time, almost everyone looked at Adatu with pity. When they received the mission, they all shied away with other reasons. Otherwise, what Adatu is experiencing now will be their fate. Sigh, is the new world already so bold? Haha, stop talking. Everyone knows the rules of the new world. Be polite before fighting. He must have rejected someone's kindness. If you want to get promoted, you have to risk your life. Oh, you have to have a life. What can you do to get promoted if you don't have a life? The chatter gradually died down, and the fire truck had arrived. Adatu walked into the Admiral's office again like a zombie. Adatu? You, what's wrong with you? The Admiral looked at Adatu's body covered in blood and couldn't help but ask. General, I won't do this anymore. I almost got killed just now. The Admiral naturally heard the explosion outside and had some speculation about this matter. He didn't confirm it until he saw Adatu's appearance. Adatu, you don't want to do it now. Can they let you go? The Admiral finally found someone who could help with this, and he would not let Adatu give up. That's it, it's done. Not only will you be promoted to Major General, but you will also be given an additional $20 million. As long as this thing is successful, a lot of money can be extorted. Adatu still lowered his head and said nothing, and the Admiral could not see the expression on his face. $30 million, Adatu blurted out with a smile on his face. A trace of anger flashed in the Admiral's eyes. The total amount is only $1 billion. If the matter succeeds, the most he can get is $100 million, and he will also give Adatu $20 million. Adatu actually wants $30 million. Isn't this using a knife to dig out his flesh? 30 million? Okay. You can take the fleet directly to the Strait tomorrow. Food and accommodation will be on board. There is nothing he can do to you. As for your wife and daughter, I will send someone to the military camp for protection. The Admiral said solemnly. Adatu nodded, stood up and walked towards the door. The Admiral looked at Adatu's back with disdain. He hated greedy people the most, but Adatu dared to bargain with him. This person would definitely not be able to hold a real position afterwards. The Varian hurriedly and slowly arrived at the Bosporus. Just like in the previous life, Tian Yangsheng and others were once again made things difficult. Sorry, according to relevant regulations, you cannot enter the strait, the staff directly returned the pass. This is the pass issued by Ermao government. Isn't it okay? Tian Yangsheng asked with a frown while holding the pass. Sorry, the Varian has seriously exceeded the tonnage of normal ships and cannot pass through the strait according to regulations, the staff said seriously. But you can also pay some fines and it will pass. Tian Yangsheng stared at the staff. How much does it cost? According to relevant regulations, the tonnage of the Varian is about $1 billion. What? $1 billion? Are you crazy about gains and losses? Tian Yanji shouted loudly. Tian Yangsheng didn't say anything. He knew that the other party would definitely make things difficult. He didn't expect that this wasn't a lion talking loudly, but an old dog swallowing the sky. Haha, I'm afraid that you senior officials will lose your life if you have one, Tian Yang laughed angrily. Knowing that this matter was not something he could decide, he still had to report it to his elder brother Li Cheng. Tian Yangsheng said, let's go. The group of people left the pass with livid faces. Tian Yangsheng immediately told his eldest brother Li Qing that Turk wanted to blackmail them for $1 billion. When Li Qing found out, he laughed out loud, $1 billion. What a big statement. What is the concept of $1 billion? You can hire a killer to take a round of the top Turks. Haha, I'm not afraid that Fengda will flash his tongue and dare to offer such a price, Li Qing fumbled for the jade bracelet in his hand. Anticipating that the Turks would play this trick, Li Qing made arrangements before the Varian set off. Now it's just a matter of time. A naval formation consisting of 3 cruisers, 3 missile frigates, a destroyer, and a supply ship has already passed through the Strait of Malacca and is traveling in the Red Sea. This special naval formation belongs to the Java Chinese Autonomous Province. At this time, the 10 instructors and hundreds of Chinese officers and soldiers on the 3053 series missile frigates were still confused. The paint on these 3 missile frigates was not dry yet, and they were sent out to take the task. These people were mainly sent to teach the Chinese in the autonomous province how to operate frigates, but they didn't expect to be pulled here directly. They are still confused now, and the instructors discussed together through the radio. Ship number 1, do you know where we are going? How should I know? We have been sailing on the sea for 2 days now, and my eyes are blank, the instructor on number 1 replied. It should be an exercise, number 3 guessed. I don't think so. I took a sneak peek. Wow, there's plenty of ammunition, more than what we brought for the South China Sea combat exercise. The instructor of number 2 stole a peek at the ammunition depot not far away. Hey, no, you didn't ask. Didn't you ask either? Obeying orders is the duty of a soldier. That makes sense, I agree. Agree +1. Okay, don't guess blindly. I'm Tohachi. Now I'm officially telling you that we are heading to the Suez Canal. Tohachi's abrupt voice sounded on the radio. The instructors of the 3 missile frigates all quieted down, and no one spoke again. After waiting for a long time, the instructor of ship number 1 asked carefully, General Tohachi, is it convenient for us to tell us what we are going to do? Tohachi cleared his throat and said solemnly, Ahem, it doesn't matter if I tell you now. Get ready. We are very likely to start a war. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 509. There was silence on the radio. If it weren't for the faint breathing, Tohachi would have thought the radio was broken. What? War? Did I hear correctly? The general is talking about war. Hum. All the echoes were filled with vibrato. These people were not nervous, but excited. China has not had a war for decades, and these people have never experienced a war. I am afraid that only those peacekeeping force soldiers and border guards in some places have participated in small-scale blocking operations. Being able to participate in the war this time was like stimulating the small universe in their bodies, making them all very passionate. After waiting for a while, these soldiers calmed down. Ahem, General Tohachi, please give specific combat instructions. The instructor on the number 1 ship tried to be serious. Tohachi was stunned. He did not expect that the Chinese soldiers were so brave and did not care about the casualties caused by the war. Don't worry, whether we fight or not depends on whether the other party gives us a chance. Tohachi didn't know the specific situation now, but when he passed Sri Lanka for supplies along the way, he discovered that Commander Li Qing had obviously greeted the countries along the way. They didn't express any surprise at all about the arrival of the fleet. Then, General, where are we going? Can we report to the people back home? Instructor number 1 asked tentatively. After all, these soldiers of my own belong to the Chinese state, and logically they should notify the Chinese army. Okay, we are not far from Somalia now. The news about our fleet is probably already known by interested people. Tohachi had originally planned to keep it secret for as long as he could, but now it is no longer necessary. There is nothing wrong with the teachers and others informing China. Somalia. Are we going to fight pirates? The word pirate popped into the minds of the Somali teachers when they heard it. Isn't it a bit wasteful for our fleet to fight pirates? Anti-aircraft guns kill mosquitoes. After all, it's actual combat, much better than shooting at a target. Several teachers were discussing on the radio. We are not fighting pirates, we are going to pick up the Varian. The commander said that our tugboat was intercepted by Turks in the Bosporus. Tuhachi smiled heartily. Varia? Aircraft carrier, the instructor's voice rose several decibels, and even broke a little in the end. Huh? Aircraft carrier? Where? One of the instructors talked about the situation of the Varia aircraft carrier in detail. At this time, everyone knew about the Varia aircraft carrier. Tisk tisk, okay, let's take the aircraft carrier home. Our country has not yet, Commander Li Qing is so awesome. Envy, I wonder when we will have our own aircraft carrier. The soldiers' emotions were high at first, but now they felt a little disappointed. Who said it's ours? The commander gave it to China. As Tuhachi was a senior general of the Chinese autonomous province of Java, Li Qing had no need to hide it from him, so he simply told him the matter. Ouch! The instructor of the number 2 ship howled, startling Tuhachi. From China. Did I hear correctly? The doubts were mixed with disbelief. They couldn't believe that Tuhachi was telling the truth. You must know that this is an aircraft carrier and not a cake. Who just gave it as a gift casually? I checked with Tuhachi again and got the same answer. All the Chinese soldiers were blushing with excitement. You stupid bitch, who dares to intercept our aircraft carrier is seeking death. Hurry, hurry, rush at full speed. My blood is burning. At this time, the soldiers were in a completely different state than before, and they even wanted to rush to Turks immediately and take the aircraft carrier home. Tuhachi smiled and hung up the radio casually. Hey, let them worry. The teacher did not dare to delay and directly contacted the country by phone. Li Qing, who was sleeping, was awakened by the rapid ringing of the phone. He looked at the call and directly changed his phone card. Brother Qi Gang, is it already this hour? Aren't you going to sleep? Li Qing yawned and opened his eyes hard to look at his watch. Qi Gang on the other side smiled sheepishly. He was just thinking about making sure and forgot about the time. Ahem, I'm sorry. Brother Li, I forgot you were in Ermao. What about that? How did I hear that you sent a fleet there? What happened? Qi Gang quickly brought the topic back to business. He was really shocked when he heard the news. Minister Zhou Feng asked him to contact Li Qing to ask about the situation. As soon as he mentioned this, Li Qing stopped feeling sleepy and sat up directly. What a bastard Turk, Li Qing easily refrained from swearing, but this time he couldn't bear it anymore. Calm down, Qi Gang was stunned for a moment when he heard this. In his mind, Brother Li had always been gentle, not showing off his expression. What exactly happened to make him break his guard? Hey, if you have anything to say, tell me Lele, I'll listen. Qi Gang was also very curious. The Turks dare to blackmail me for $1 billion, I will attack his mother. In these years, Li Qing has been the only one who has blackmailed others, but he never thought that someone would dare to blackmail him. It is really unbearable for his uncle and unbearable for his aunt. Qi Gang also said in surprise. The house price in Beijing these days is only 2,100 square meters, $1 billion. Turks really dare to think that? Huh? It's because of the Varian incident. Qi Gang reacted instantly. This matter is not difficult to guess. Except for the Varian, Li Qing and the Turks have basically nothing to do with each other. Yeah, Li Qing didn't hide it. Damn it, Grandma, this damn bitch deserves to go to hell. Qi Gang cursed for several minutes without even repeating his words. Li Qing. Who said calm down on the phone just now? Did he hear it wrong? It wasn't until Qi Gang stopped that Li Qing dared to speak, so I transferred the Lion fleet. Qi Gang was silent for a moment. Brother Li, do you really want to fight? Haha, I have other means. If that doesn't work, let's have a fight. I want to see how long the Turks can last. Li Qing looked confused. Apparently he had other arrangements besides the fleet. I want to report this matter to my superiors, but there is a high probability that I won't be able to help you openly, you know. Qi Gang didn't say it clearly. Li Qing also understood what he meant. He didn't expect his hometown to take action in this matter. It was too conspicuous. If my hometown takes action, I'm afraid the beautiful country will definitely take action as well. It's better to solve it in our own way, and no one can say anything. Qi Gang seemed to be afraid that Li Qing would misunderstand, and said quickly, but don't worry, Brother Li, we will definitely help in other ways. On the surface, my hometown cannot take action, but there are still many non-state organizations, such as financial investment groups, hacker alliances. There are simply too many ways. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 510. In the center of Ankara, the capital of the Turkic region, a mid-level naval officer, Mustafa, had just come off a warship. This time, he happened to be on his day off. Mustafa is a typical Turk. Because his father was a soldier, he followed in his father's footsteps and joined the navy. He is now the deputy captain of a frigate. Ah, I'm finally on my day off. This time, I'll take my daughter to the amusement park. Mustafa pulled his suitcase and thought as he walked. My daughter was very active when she just started kindergarten. He could only go home once a month. This time, he had to make it up to his daughter. Not long after, he walked to his high-end residential area. Angela, Dad is back. Mustafa was very surprised. In the past, his wife and daughter were waiting for him at home at this time. After leaving his luggage, he began to look for his wife and daughter. To his disappointment, they were not at home. Did they go to his father-in-law's house for dinner? Mustafa muttered to himself. Buzz. The vibration of the mobile phone sounded. Because of his job, he always set his mobile phone to silent or vibrate. Hello, hello. Mr. Mustafa? Haha, your wife and children are in my hands. The voice changer made Mustafa unable to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Robber? What do you want? Money. Years of military service calmed him down in extreme anger. I don't want anything. Did you see the black bag next to the shoe cabinet? Mustafa turned and walked to the shoe cabinet, picked up the black bag on it, opened it directly, and saw a C4 bomb with a dial. Time bomb. I want you to put the bomb in the arsenal of Istanbul. You just need to press the red button lightly, and you don't have to worry about anything. We have left you enough time to escape. Mustafa's eyes widened, and he understood the other party's intention in an instant. Istanbul was the missile frigate he served on. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Don't even think about it, Mustafa shouted. The other party was so crazy that he asked him to destroy his own missile frigate. Impossible. Okay. It seems that I have to go to Ali. I guess he will do this for his son. After all, his son is also in my hands. However, your wife and daughter. Ali's position is the deputy captain of Istanbul, just like Mustafa. A woman's scream and a child's cry suddenly appeared on the phone, and Mustafa recognized their voices at once. It was his wife and daughter. No, don't hurt them, I will do it right away. Don't worry, remember to pretend that nothing happened, and put the bomb in the ship's arsenal at 12 noon 2 days later. The man hung up the phone directly, and Mustafa collapsed to the ground powerlessly. He had no choice. For the sake of his wife and daughter, he had to listen to this mysterious man. Similar things happened to the chief engineer of the Anka, the radar sergeant of the Vyuki, and the signal sergeant of the Mura. Turkic Ministry of Commerce, Minister's Office. Minister, Minister. It's not good. The deputy minister pushed the door open directly. The Mediterranean minister pursed the 3 hairs on his head and frowned. What's the matter? China cancelled our wool order, the deputy minister said breathlessly. Agriculture, tourism, and wool textiles are the 3 pillar industries of the Turks and the main source of income for the Turks. Humph, China cancels it, it's just a little bit every year anyway. Ankara wool and textiles are mainly sold to Europe, and less than 1/20th of them are sold to China, so the Minister of Commerce doesn't care much. Carpet orders from Southeast Asian countries have also been cancelled, the deputy minister said carefully. Go and investigate what the reason is. Although the demand for wool products in Southeast Asian countries is very small, China and Southeast Asia cancelled orders at the same time, so there may be something else. Also, several big customers in Europe suddenly cancelled their orders, the deputy minister said in a low voice. Which ones? Dixiang, Bamag, Miwa, Venice, Ruble. The Minister of Commerce couldn't help but open his mouth wide at this time. These are all giants in the European textile industry. Half of the orders are from them. Why are they cancelling the orders at the same time? The Minister of Commerce was also shocked at this time. If this matter goes wrong, he will step down. Check it quickly, the Minister of Commerce blew out a high note. He also took out his phone and called the president of Bamag. Hello, Mr. Karl, I am Ballader from the Turkic Commerce Department. Sorry to bother you. May I ask why you cancelled our order? Well, sorry, I can't say more. The Minister of Commerce looked at the busy tone and was stunned. He reluctantly called other people's numbers, but the results were indeed the same. They all seemed to be very secretive. It was not easy to find out from a familiar boss that this matter seemed to be related to the famous Camorra family in Europe. In addition to the instability of the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Tourism is also in a big trouble. In famous scenic spots and cities across the Turkic region, there have been frequent looting and smashing incidents in recent days. These incidents have spread all over the world through the internet. People have said that traveling to other places costs money, and traveling to the Turkic region costs lives, which has seriously affected the development of the entire tourism industry. The agriculture of the 3 pillar industries is no exception. Fruits such as cherries, figs, and pomegranates exported to the United States have all had problems with excessive pesticide residues to varying degrees. The United States not only returned these fruits, but also imposed a high fine on the Turkish multinational agricultural product company. The Turkish Minister of Agriculture is miserable. The president is also very busy, either putting out fires or on the way to putting out fires. However, there are also wise people among the president's staff. They have finally discovered that these things point to an organization behind them, New World, through various events. I don't care about this matter. I'll give you a week to solve this matter. If you can't solve it, I will ask Congress to remove you from your position as admiral. The president's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Although he also had a share in the extortion of $1 billion, he hadn't got it after all. Now that the country has lost so much because of this matter, he also has to consider his own public support rate. He can't lose his presidency because of these little things. Don't worry, Mr. President, I will go to New World to talk now and will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. The admiral touched the sweat on his head. Among the senior executives involved in this matter, he was the lowest in position. If he didn't solve this matter properly, he would be the first to be stabbed. Well, I believe you. But my share cannot be less. After the president finished speaking, he waved his hand and let the admiral go away. The admiral walked out of the presidential office with a gloomy face. Although he just said he would talk to New World, he was still determined to continue this matter. On the surface, he listens to the president, but in fact his master is the United States, and he does whatever his master tells him to do.